Welcome and thank you for standing by. Currently, all participants are in listen-only mode. Today's webinar is being recorded, and the recording will be posted publicly. If you have any objections, you may disconnect at this time. Now I'd like to turn the call over to your host for today, Crystal Jimerson.
Good morning, everyone, and welcome to today's webinar on using on the map for labor force and employment. My name is Crystal Jimerson, and I'm a data dissemination specialist here at the U.S. Census Bureau. I want to thank you for joining us today for the It's All in the Tools webinar series. This new series was created by the Census Academy team here at the Census Bureau. You can register for any of the workshop webinars by accessing census.gov. We will post the workshops monthly for early registration. Just visit census.gov/academy. Please note the seating is limited, first come, first served basis. We think these hands-on exercise-based workshops will be a valuable opportunity for you to learn from our experts about how to access the Census Bureau data products and resources. If you wish to follow along, take a moment now to open an additional browser to participate in the exercises. Before I introduce today's speaker, let's go over a few important housekeeping rules. As mentioned earlier, this webinar is being recorded. For your convenience, it will be uploaded to our Census Academy site with all supplemental materials relating to the webinar. In terms of how to ask questions during the webinar, you can submit your written questions using the Q&A panel, which is at the bottom center or the right side of your WebEx screen. Please take a moment to locate that now. Once you found the Q&A panel, make sure you choose All Panelists from the drop-down menu. This will ensure we see your question. Don't send your questions to an individual panelist. Also, we ask that you do not include any personal or business identifiable information with your questions. Now let's talk about the chat panel. Look for that on your screen now. It's probably right next to the Q&A panel. Definitely keep that chat panel open also, because this is where we will provide key links and other resources. Keep in mind, you won't be able to respond to the chat. Chat is just for us to send you links and other resources. In the chat box, we will be sharing throughout the webinar the link to our evaluation. We are very interested in hearing from you how we are doing. My colleagues, Kim Davis and Jamie Middlebrook, will be monitoring the Q&A panel. As time allows, we will answer your question directly through the Q&A panel, or we will share your questions with the presenter to respond to throughout the workshop. If we don't get to all your questions with the response during the webinar, we will post the questions and responses with the webinar materials on the census.gov/academy site within 30 business days. Again, as mentioned before, near the end of the webinar, we'll put into the chat a link to our evaluation so you can tell us how we did today. We hope you'll take the time to complete, as we are always looking for ways to improve our training. As you know, we are in a virtual environment and sometimes technical difficulties might occur. If you are having issues, try a different browser such as Chrome, or consider logging out and coming back into the session. If you are having audio issues, try selecting the computer audio or calling into the webinar via phone. Now, I would like to introduce our speaker, Erlene Dow. Thanks for being here with us today. Erlene, you may begin.
Thank you, Crystal. And thank you, everyone, for joining us this morning. My name is Erlene Dell, as Crystal said, and I've been promoting the Longitudinal Employer Household Dynamics, or LEHD program, since 2010. Today, we will be looking at my favorite data tool out of all of the LEHD suite of tools, OnTheMap. This is how we will spend our time. First, we'll look at the LEHD program and the Local Employment Dynamics, or LED partnership. Then I'll give you a brief description of all the LEHD data products and tools used for labor force and employment. And then we will take a deep dive of all things on the map, from the basics to the advanced. You will be an expert after this session. I would also like to mention a few resources, starting with our homepage, lehd.ces.census.gov, along with a link to our LED webinar series, where we have monthly webinars on how data users are using our data. We also have the LED in Action tab, which are published articles on how more data users are using our products. LEHD products are different from other census data in the fact that our data comes from our Local Employment Dynamics, or LED partnership, which is a voluntary federal-state partnership. Its main purpose is to merge employee data and employer data to produce a collection of enhanced labor market statistics with state-of-the-art confidentiality protection. Under the partnership, states send their unemployment insurance, or UI, wage records and their quarterly census of employment wages, or QCEW data, which is then combined with censuses and surveys to create this dynamic information on workers to produce public use data products as well as microdata for research. The UI records give us job data, the QCEW gives us firm data, and our person data comes from censuses and surveys. This is how we connect where the worker works and where the worker lives. The map to the right shows our active state partners in blue. You can see Puerto Rico and the Virgin Islands are also included partners. Currently, LEHD has 3 main data sets and 2 experimental data sets. Each data set has an application for easy access. Each data set, along with each data tool, is unique in its own way. If you are curious about employment, hires, separations, turnovers, and earnings, you would look at the Quarterly Workforce Indicator, or QWI, utilizing the QWI Explorer, the LED extraction tool, or Census API. If you want to look at the employment for detailed and customized geography, you would look at the LEHD Origin Destination Employment Statistics, or LOADS data, using OnTheMap or OnTheMap for Emergency Management data tools, and coming later this year in the LED extraction tool. OnTheMap for Emergency Management is the only data tool that's part of the LEHD suite of tools that has population data, along with data from other federal agencies. If you want to look at statistics on job mobility across the state boundaries or industries, transitions between jobs by timing and firm or worker characteristics, or earning changes due to job changes, you would use our job-to-job or J2J flows data using the J2J Explorer and now in our LED extraction tool. One of our newer data sets is the Post-Secondary Employment Outcomes, or PSEO. This experimental data set reports earnings by institution, degree field, degree level, and graduation cohort for 1, 5, and 10 years after graduation, and is accessible through the PSEO Explorer and Census API. The current release includes 26 participating states with details from 825 schools. Finally, we have another experimental data set called the Veteran Employment Outcomes, or VEO. This experimental data set reports earnings and employment outcomes for U.S. Army veterans 1, 5, and 10 years after discharge by military occupation, rank, demographics, industry, and geography of employment. This is accessible through our VEO Explorer. In addition to data tools, raw data downloads are available along with LEHD microdata for approved projects through our secure census research data centers. In 2011, Amazon decided to build their first headquarters adjacent to downtown Seattle in a nitty-gritty industrial area called South Lake Union. Over the years, this area has become a tech hub with high-rises, fancy restaurants, coffee shops, and green spaces. Though Amazon is the main contributor to this area, Google, Microsoft, Facebook, and REI all have offices in that area. Before we dive into the analyses, let's talk about the application. OnTheMap is a web-based mapping and reporting application that shows where workers work and where they live. It provides companion reports on age, earnings, industry, distribution, race, ethnicity, educational attainment, and sex. We have data from 2002 to 2020 for most of the 50 states, including DC. You can customize the selection area as low as the census block with disclosure protection, and input-output reports are available, which means you can import and export shapefiles and download and print reports. This is a screenshot of the work area profile analysis of Seattle for the year 2020 of all jobs. The work area profile gives you an overview of the selected area with over 51 different characteristics. Results can be filtered by worker age, earnings, two-digit NAICS industry, worker race, ethnicity, education, sex, and firm age and firm size. We'll go live in a minute to look at these characteristics. Using OnTheMap and the case study about Seattle, let's answer the following questions. How many all jobs are in Seattle City, Washington, in 2020? How many workers have less than a high school education? And what is the shares of workers that work in retail? Here are the step-by-step instructions on how to conduct this analysis. I'll read the steps and then I'll demonstrate. So first we'll go to the hyperlink census.gov. We'll select Browse by Data and Maps. Then we'll select Data Tools and Apps. Select Local Employment Dynamics. Select OnTheMap. And then in the search box, we're going to type in Seattle. Then we're going to choose Seattle City, Washington under Places. We'll select City. And then we're going to see a pop-up box appear. And then we're going to select Perform Analysis on Selection Area. And then we're going to do, in the analysis, we're going to select Area Profile 2020, 2015, 2010, and 2002. And then we're going to select all jobs under job type and then select Go. So I know that was pretty fast, but in the future, you're going to have this example so that you can go back and look at it. So going live now. So as I said, we're going to the census.gov. And one of the ways to find us is if you click on or hover over Data and Maps, and then go over to Data Tools and Apps. And I'll click on that. And then I'm going to scroll down. Everything is actually alphabetized. So I'm going to scroll down to L. Where it says Local Employment Dynamics. And I'll click on that. And once I'm there, it takes us to our homepage. So I want to mention also that the best way to use all of our data tools is to use Chrome or Firefox, mostly because we have so many graphics that is so detailed to upload. So it just seems to work best with Chrome and Firefox. So once I'm here, on the left-hand column, you'll see applications, and then the third choice is OnTheMap. And just to show you a little bit, I'm going to click on the second tab where it says Applications. And then that just shows you all of our different applications that we have that I kind of covered earlier. And then it even gives you a little bit of a description of what the application can do. So again, I'm going to OnTheMap. And that brings us to this homepage. And then I'll go ahead and type in Seattle. Now you can either click on search or you can click on enter, either or. And once I do that, any geography that has the word Seattle pops up. So we're going to go ahead and click on Seattle City. And then there's a pop-up. So in this pop-up, we can see how many square miles in the selection area, and we can see how many census blocks are here. So one of the things about all of our data tools is that it's very intuitive. So if I'm looking at this box, I'm going to go ahead and think, I'll just go ahead and perform analysis on selection area. So I'm going to click on that. And then it gives us an analysis settings. So here in the first column, this is where you can choose whether you want to look at where the worker lives or where the worker works. We're going to keep it at work. Then the next column are all of the different analyses that you can work through. So we're going to work through almost all of them except the area comparison, but if we have time, I'll come back to that one. But the area profile kind of gives you an overview of all of the different things in the selected area. It has 51 characteristics about that one. Same with the area comparison, where you can actually compare earnings, you can compare race, education, you can compare location and geography. The distance direction tells you how many miles people are traveling to where they work and what regions they're coming from, whether it's north, east, west, or south. And then destination actually tells you where they're coming from, and there's a destination type. So you can choose places, you can choose zip codes, census tracts, census blocks, anything that you decide. And then the inflow outflow tells you how many people travel into the area to work, how many people live and work in the area, and how many people travel out of the area to work. All of this, if you hover over any question mark, gives you the example or a little definition of what you're looking at. So under the year in the instructions, we talked about clicking on 2015, 2010, and then 2002. That way we can kind of look at the different trends that have happened over the years in Seattle. And then the job type, so all jobs is every single job out there. If you have more than one job, that's where it would be. Primary jobs is if it's the job that brings home the most income. And then all private jobs and private primary jobs are the same thing, except it's all private. So I'm going to go ahead and click on all jobs. And then there's this lightning bolt, bold, go with an exclamation point. You click on that. All right, so once that comes up, and I'm guessing that everybody's working on this with me. That's why it's running a bit slow. But once that comes up, there should be a map. There's going to be a chart to the right, and then there's going to be tables on the right-hand side. So I'll just go over some of the features of this page. So the Start tab was where we began, and we put in the selected area. Base map, you can actually click on that, and if you want to look at different things, such as airports or schools or universities or tribal lands, you can click on that. So I'll just show you airports just for kicks. Who knew that there were so many airports in Washington? Not me, but I guess that makes sense with Bremerton being there on the west because that's a Navy base. Okay, I'm going to unclick all that. And then this we will cover afterwards about the selection tab, and then back to the results. Under display settings, you can see the characteristics filter. Right now, everything that is characteristics, we have it on the right-hand side. And we'll go over that too. And then the year. So in the settings, we changed the years, or we added 2015, 2010, 2002. That's where it would be. I also wanted to make a point where it says enter your own subtitle. You can actually click on that, and then we can type in Amazon effect or anything you want to name it. And then the next box is the map controls. So this first part is the color key. If you don't like the blue, you can change it to any color that you like. You can also unclick the thermal overlay. So if I unclick the thermal overlay, all we have here is points. And if you scroll down, you can see on the bottom on the left-hand side is the legend. So the smaller the points, the less the jobs. The bigger the points, the more the jobs. So that represents a block. If I click the thermal overlay and click on point overlay, we can see the different density of jobs in the square miles. So again, the lighter the color, the less jobs in that square miles, while the darker, the more jobs. And 9,333 jobs is not that little, but compared to 233,222 jobs, it is. We'll come back and I'll show you more about the point overlay, animate overlays, and the identify key later. So another thing you can do is you can click on this detailed report and you can export the report by PDF, Excel, or HTML. And then you can actually see, in plain sight, the different trends. So you can see in 2002, there were 472,920, while now in 2020, there's 615,720. And 2010, before Amazon built in that area into the South Lake Union area, there was 503,357. And then in 2015, there was about 40,000 more jobs there. And then you can just kind of scroll. And if you're, looking at the answers to your questions, it'll all be here. But I'm going to show you how you can look at it from other parts. So we'll close out of that. And then just to let you know, you can export this geography and you can click on this print map and it'll create this document for you that is going to be like a PDF. And sometimes it just takes a bit, but I think it's worth showing. And then you get this pretty map with the legend along with the charts. Okay, going back to this. All right, so now we're going to look on the right-hand side and we can see the worker age. We can see the earnings. We can see the NAICS industry sector. We can see the worker race, worker ethnicity, worker educational attainment, and worker sex. And now we can actually go ahead and answer those questions. All right. So how many all jobs are in Seattle City? And that answer would be 615,720. So hopefully everybody got that correct. Now we're going to scroll down and we're going to look at the high school education, those that have less than high school education. And we can see that answer is 46,988. And then we're going to scroll up to the area where it says retail trade. So here we see retail trade, and that is 16%. So I can even click on this retail trade and it'll actually just highlight in the map just retail trade areas. And this is really cool. So I'm going to take off the point overlay and you can see this area where it's darker in the smaller area. So that is South Lake Union in this area. And then I know that I have a PowerPoint slide that shows the animate, but I'm just going to show you now. And this is just looking at retail trade. So I'll click on the animation key, and then we can see from 2002 to 2010 to 2020. And it's very interesting how, you know, in 2002, it was so spread out, right? Retail was everywhere. And then as the years went on, it was all in one area. So it's just kind of fascinating stuff you can like explore and look at, you know, certain areas that you're familiar with, you know, answers that you might want to go into. That's how we, you know, you can just play around with the tool. Okay, so yes, so we looked at the thermal overlay, and the only way the thermal overlay works is if you have clicked on multiple years. So we did that, you know, we clicked on 2020, 2015, 2010, 2002, so that we could look at that feature. And then you can also look at where the workers live. So in the selected area, we have the home area profile, and this generates the results showing the location characteristics of workers living in the selection area. And here's another exercise for you. So we're going to find out, and this is, just remember that this is about where the worker lives. So we're going to look at how many all jobs are in Seattle, Washington again, but now we're looking at 2002. And then we're going to look at how many workers earn $12.50 per month or less. And then we're going to look at what is the shares of workers that work in retail trade. So I'm going to go live again. And the easiest way to find this answer is using this change settings, which is down at the bottom on the left-hand side. But before I go, I just want to go ahead and reset table to make it back to where it was before, and including all the next industry sectors, not just, and I'll click on the point overlay. And before I go, I just want to tell you a couple more things. I'm so sorry. But if you want to hide the tabs, you can do that to make your map bigger. And then if you wanted to, you can save this, go to lunch, come back, and then load it. And then if you're having issues, you can contact our software people and they will help you. And then you can also hide charts. So we can take out the charts, and then again, you can look at the map. All right, so this change settings tab down here on the left-hand side is going to be our friend today. So we're going to click on change settings. We're going to click on home, and then we're going to click on go. And while the map is loading up, I'm going to go ahead and change the year on the left-hand side. I'm going to change it to 2002 so we can see it better. All right, so back to the questions as soon as those points come in. All righty, great. Hoping you all are looking at the same screen if you're working with me. But to answer the questions, how many all jobs are in Seattle City, Washington in 2002? So we see that that's 284,816. And keep in mind again, this is how many people live, or how many workers live in Seattle. And then we can scroll down to the earnings where it says $12.50 per month or less. And we can see the answer to the second question is $68,964. And then we can scroll down and see that the retail trade is 9.2. And again, this is just those that live in the selected area. So these are the workers that live in the selected area. And then if we go back to the detailed report to look at that and compare, we can see that in 2002, it was 284,816, while 2020, there's 365,909. And then it's also really interesting to see retail. So see retail was 9.2, and then it grew to 15%. All right, so moving on. One of the analysis types available on the map is the distance direction. The distance direction analysis generates results showing the distance and direction totals between residence and employment locations for workers employed or living in the selection area. So let's go live to get a better look. So here we are again. I'm going to go ahead and click on that change settings. And we're going to go ahead and scroll down to distance direction and then click go. So now as the map is generating, we can see on the right-hand side the radar chart, and then we can see also how many miles people are traveling to the selected areas to work. So we can see that less than 10 miles are about 286,827. And then we have 10 to 24 miles, 56,286, and so on. And then you can actually click on each of these, anything that's hyperlinked in blue, and then we can see those traveling greater than 50 miles. A lot of them are coming from the south, and then the second location would be the east. So if you're familiar with Seattle, you would know that people are probably traveling from Tacoma or, Redmond, Bellevue, whatever's here to the east. And you can see all of those different things. All right. And then to get back, you just close out that, and then it takes you back to the main page that we were looking at.
Hi, Arlene. This is Kim, and I just wanted to take a moment while we have a couple of questions and pause. Is there any union enrollment data in the LEHD on the map?
No, I'm
All
sorry,
right.
we don't have that.
And one more.
And if we did, I mean, it's not specific to the union. I mean, it just depends on, the organization, the companies that are reporting the information with their UI wage records. So we don't know who's union and who's not.
Thank you for answering that, Arlene. I just have one more quick question. Can you select specific occupations like agricultural workers?
So we do not have occupation in the LEHD data products. We have everything's by industry. And we do have agriculture in other data sets that we have, such as our quarterly workforce indicators, but not on the map.
All right, thank you, Arlene, for answering that.
Sure. All right, going back to the PowerPoint, we have the destination analysis. This generates results showing the home or work destination of workers employed or living in the selection area. So again, we're going to go live and we're going to select change settings again. And I'm going to click on work instead. So we'll click on destination. We're going to keep the destination type at places and click go. Also, I didn't mention this, but we also have federal jobs in here, and that's through our primary and private. So you would have to do a little bit of math to minus the private from the primary so that you can get the federal jobs. But also in the area profile, you can actually scroll down and there is public administration, which has some of our federal jobs in that. So anyway, this is the destination, yes, the destination analysis. And right now we're looking at the top 10 areas. And then we also have, you can change the top 10 to 25, 50, or 100. You can click on all workers and then we can see characteristics regarding these areas. So if I click on worker age and I want to see those that are 55 or older, the table will update and we can see all the different 55 or older numbers. And I will go back to all workers. One of my favorite features of the destination is the spoke overlay. So I'll click on spoke overlay. And that kind of gives you a visual of where people are coming from to work in Seattle. And you can also, I was telling you about this identify key. If you click on identify, and you can close out of this box, you don't have to wait for it, and you click on the tip of a spoke. So I clicked on Shoreline City, and we can see how many workers are in Shoreline City that are traveling to Seattle. We can see what their ages are. We can see their earnings and the industry segments that they work in. So I think on the next slide, we had some questions to answer for this. So we're looking at how many workers in Shoreline City in 2020 are 55 or older. What is the third largest city that workers live in? And what is the shares of workers in Kent City? So going back to answer those questions. So in Shoreline City, one of the things you can do is click on Shoreline City, and then the map just highlights just Shoreline City. And then we can use that identify key again if we wanted to. Or we can click on worker age. And then the number updates on the table or on the chart. So we can see that that number is 3,219. I'll go back to all places again. And I will click on all workers again so we can answer the other questions. So the next question is, what is the third largest city that workers live in Renton? And you can see 1, 2, 3. Oh, I gave you the answers. So anyway, Renton is the third largest city. And then what is the shares of workers in Kent City? So we go to Kent City and look at the shares, and that would be 2.3%. And just to point out that I keep using the ladder to zoom in and zoom out to be able to see better. And then again, with the legend, you know, the darker the area, the more the jobs, the lighter the area, the less the jobs.
Erlene, I just have one more quick question for you at this moment. What GIS software was used to build on the map?
So we use Java.
All right, thanks.
Mm-hmm. All right, so moving on. Here is a list of the largest cities by population in the United States. New York being at the top, Los Angeles, Chicago, then Houston, Phoenix, Philadelphia, San Antonio, San Diego, Dallas, and so on. So, you know, there's always been talk about eventually Houston will overtake Chicago. And I like to use this example when we're looking at the inflow-outflow. Because it's such a big number. So here we're looking at the inflow-outflow of Houston, and we can see that 1,183,058 people travel into Houston to work. 992 live and work within Houston. And then 296,366 people travel out of Houston to work. So if you've heard, Houston has like 5 lanes of highway, so it's huge. And so this is what they're dealing with. They're dealing with so much traffic. So let's go live to do this. And I'm gonna show you something. So here in the right-hand corner, there is a reload button. And you can click on that, and that'll give you a clean sheet or a clean map. And then in the search box, you know, you guys have been doing this with me for a few analyses, so you know what to do now. So we're going to type in Houston, and we're going to click on enter. All right, and once that happens, under places, we'll go ahead and click on Houston City, Texas. I hope I hit Texas and not Minnesota. And then again, the pop-up comes up and we can see Houston City, Texas, how many square miles, how many census blocks. We'll click on perform analysis on selection area. And then the settings comes up. And all we're going to do is click on inflow, outflow. And then also, so I like to use all jobs because that kind of tells me, even though it's like this one person might still be having 2 to 3 jobs, but they're still having to go somewhere with this job. So I like to click on all jobs. If you want, you can just do primary jobs or all private jobs. You can do whatever you want. So I'll click on go. And usually if you're doing this on your own without a you know, a webinar with 300 other people, this might actually go a little faster for you. But just because there's so many people using this, and Houston is no small city, so it takes just a little bit to actually upload. So here we go. Just like the screenshot, it shows that we have 1,183,058 traveling into the area to work. But here on the right-hand side, you can see that those that are actually employed in the area, and I can click on that, and it shows us that 1,796,050 actually work in Houston. Now, if I just want to look at the living in the selection area, I can click on that, and you see that the VIN chart updates, everything updates, the map updates, and we can see that 909,358 live in Houston. All right, so now we're going to get to the advanced stuff. And one of the analysis types available in OnTheMap is the paired area analysis. So users must add an advanced selection area to their normal selection in order to allow analysis of workers living in one area and working in the other. The paired area analysis generates results showing the home and work locations and characteristics of workers that share the selected paired area. So I've included this example that we actually have on our website that you can work through. I think Kim's going to put in the chat the link to this page, and I'm just going to work through it. So again, I'm going to reload. And then in the box, it's based on that question. Did you guys see that question? The question was, how many workers employed in Minneapolis, Minnesota, live in St. Paul, Minnesota? So I'm going to type in Minneapolis, click on search, and then I'm going to scroll down to Minneapolis City under places. Again, pop-up box. But instead of clicking perform analysis on selection area, I'm going to click on add advanced selection. Once that happens, it puts me into the advanced selection tab. So here, I'm going to click on draw points, and I'm just going to put a little dot into St. Paul. And then I'm going to change the add layer selection, and I'm going to click on the chevron there, and I'm going to click on places. Once I do that, the confirm advanced selection with the green check mark has bolded, so that tells me I'm allowed to go ahead and click on that. So then you get another pop-up, and this one asks if you want to do the paired area analysis, or you can look at both areas, or you can look at intersected areas, or you can look at selection area minus advanced area. We are just going to do the perform paired area. And then this is a different analysis setting. So it has work, which is the first selection, which was Minneapolis, and then it has home, advanced selection, which was St. Paul. So we're going to keep it as is, and I'm going to click on primary jobs. I think that's what the example said, primary jobs. Yes. Okay. And the answer to the question is 25,717. And then it gives you some of the details regarding this, so we can see what the ages are, what the earnings are, and what the industry segments are. So if you've noticed throughout the analyses that we're going through, the area profile, and then we didn't show the area comparison, but the area comparison, they actually have 51 different characteristics. But that information is, we're not connecting where the worker works and where the worker lives. While the other analyses, such as the destination, the inflow, outflow, the distance, direction, and the paired area analysis, this is all just how we connect where the worker works and where the worker lives. So that gives us less of characteristics versus the area of profile and the area comparison. So I just wanted to make that point. It's probably a little confusing too. All right, so now we're going to do some fun stuff, which is the import shapefiles. And this is going to be the final analysis that we're going to attempt to do, and probably the most difficult with all of us. And in this screenshot, we can see the DC metro entrances and how many workers live and work in the area. So currently we're looking at the setup. We haven't actually done it yet. I do have total primary jobs. And then on the next slide, I actually have how to. So I don't know if you all want to attempt to try to do this with me. I'm definitely going to just go ahead and work it through so you can see the process. And then when you're, when you're on your own, you can try to figure it out yourself. So I think Kim's going to actually add this hyperlink into the chat, but I'm going to go ahead and click on that. And then it brings me to a website that has the shapefiles and KML and anything that you need to download. So we're going to click on download. And then you can actually decide whether you want to do the KML or the shapefile. So I will click on download options, and I already had this from before. So I'm going to click on this because it'll take less time for me to do that. So I'm just going to click on that. It's downloading into my downloads. And now I'm going to go back to the on the map. So here we are again, reloading again. And now, instead of entering into the search box, I am going to go ahead and click on import from shapefiles. So if you had downloaded the KML, you could use that. And then now you can just do the import shapefiles. So they've actually updated this recently. Before, you have to actually add if you're familiar with shapefiles, you used to have to add the SHX and the SHP, and I think it was a PRJ. But now you just click on choose files, and I'm going to click on that where it was downloaded in my downloading files, and then I'm going to import. And it just goes into the on the map, and I'm going to zoom to the imported shapefile so I can see that it's actually loaded up what I wanted. I'm going to click on select all points, and then I'm going to click on continue with selected features. So now it takes me back to the selection tab, and I'm going to go ahead and put in a little bit of a buffer. So I'm going to go down to the add buffer to selection on the left-hand side. I'm going to click on simple ring, and just to show you, you can do simple ring, you can do a donut, you can do a plume, but I'm just going to do this simple ring because we got to keep it simple. And once I put in 0.25, I can confirm selection. And then it puts a little ring around all of the different DC Metro entrances. And you guys know what to do from here. We can click on Perform Analysis. We can look at the work area and the home area. So let's go ahead and look at the work area. Well, let's look at the home area first. And we're going to click on, I think it was it all jobs? Yeah, all jobs. And click on Go. And so this is interesting to see. So we see that there are 64,942 workers that live near the metro entrances. Now we're going to go ahead and look at how many people actually work around those areas. So again, going to our favorite change settings key down on the lower left-hand corner, and we change home to work and click Go. And we can see there's 420,000 people that work in those area, the DC Metro entrances. So imagine how those people that live in those areas feel with all of those different workers too. So it's just kind of interesting stuff. And then you can, do the usual, scroll down and we can see the earnings, we can see the NAICS industry. And again, we're looking at the area profiles. So that's why we have like the different 51 characteristics. I'll also go ahead and show you one more thing before we go. I'm going to go ahead and click on the all private jobs in the change settings, and I'll click on Go. And then, and then we can see, stop it. We can see the firm age and firm size. So because it's private, this is the information we can see. So we can see, how many workers or how many years the firm age is and the firm size. So we have these workers that work in a firm size of 0 to 19, that's about 28,860. And then for the bigger firms, we can see that there's like 166,602 in those areas. All right, so we looked at the home area and we looked at the work area. So that brings us to the on the map for emergency management. So I'm not going to spend a whole lot of time on this. I just want to tell you this is the sister map to on the map. And I mentioned earlier that it actually has information we just added 2020 decennial. So we have that information for population. We also have the ACS in there. So that's we have it from 2017 to 2021. And then we have the loads data, which is 2020. So this is pretty current, even though, you might think 2020 is still old now, but it's current for census stuff, right? Because it's always so hard to get that information. We also have information that comes from NOAA, FEMA, the Department of Agriculture, Department of Interior, so that we can look at fires and FEMA disaster declaration areas, floods, and we can also see hurricanes as they're coming up the coast and seeing what the impacts might be. So just to let you know, I will be doing another webinar and just basically on the map for emergency management, and that I think is on August 10th. So hopefully you can join me again for that webinar. Other than that, here are some summary and resources. Here's the on the map help and documentation page, the LED webinar series and LED in action that I spoke about earlier. I'm just going to click on this so that you can get a look-see at where this takes you. So this takes you to the help and documentation page. And then if you scroll down a little bit where it says tutorials and you click on analysis guides, it gives you every single analysis that we covered. And it has like a description of how you can work through it and, you know, self-teach yourself how to use these analyses. And that's it. So I hope you enjoyed this webinar. I hope you learned from it, and I'm ready for any questions that you might have.
All right, Erlene, thank you. That was wonderful. I think we've been able to answer most of the questions, but I do have 2 more questions for you. When will the updates to the race and ethnicity data collection be available to add to this tool?
I'm not sure what you mean. So the race and ethnicity is always added via the American Community Survey. So whenever the American Community Survey releases the next 5 years, that's when it gets updated.
All right, thank you, Erlene. And I have one more question. Do the imported shapefiles need to be in WGS84?
No. No. And if you have trouble, please reach out to me and I will assist, or I will find somebody to assist.
All right, thank you, Erlene. I just want to let everybody know, if you asked a question in the Q&A and I did not answer it, if you don't mind re-asking it, or if the answer I responded with didn't satisfy your question, please let me know. Re-drop it in there and I'll be happy to ask Erlene those questions again. At this time, I don't see any further questions, Erlene. Thank you.
Great. Thank you, Kim. Well, okay. Well, I really appreciate all of you spending your time with me. I hope this was informative and of value to you, and I hope to see you on the next webinar.
Hey, Erlene, I have one more question that just came in, if you have just another minute. Is there a way to export more than 10 zip codes at a time?
Yes. So if you're using the on the map, the application, there's an area on the left-hand side that actually says, let's go here. Let me just put in 96813, for example. And so I typed in this zip code, and I might click on area comparison. I'll click on zip code, and I'll click go. And then so it has one zip code here. But this is, if I didn't use zip code, like if I put in Honolulu and clicked on zip codes within that. So let me go back to that, sorry. And you can always use the raw data and download all of that. But see how I put in Honolulu, it gave me all the zip codes, and then you can click on top 100 or what, or all, and then you're able to export that through the detailed reports. So if I click on detailed reports, it'll give me all of the zip codes here. So hopefully that answered your question. I hope so.
Great. Arlene, thanks for giving that demonstration. That was really helpful.
Sure.
I do have one more question here. Given all the work from home in 2020, how well does the data reflect where people were actually working?
So that's tricky. And so what it is, it's like, so it's based on where, so but I think the easiest way to do that would be to look at the characteristics in the different industries. So Zillow has used our data before, and they've actually looked at the different industries. So if you look at like food and accommodations, that's not a job that you can normally work from home. So just going through kind of picking out like, let me, so, kind of picking out the different industries that that would be more likely to work remote would be something like information or finance and insurance, or professional and scientific and technical services. These are some of the ones that you would kind of, and even sometimes educational services, you would kind of think, oh, well, that would be maybe somebody who would be allowed to work remote. So that's the best that I can answer that. There was, like I said, there was an article that Zillow wrote, and what Zillow did was they used some of the American Community Survey data and combined that with the LEHD data to find out, who is actually working remote. Sorry, that probably wasn't a good enough answer.
Thank you, Arlene. That is, I agree. It's kind of a tricky question,
Yeah.
because of the transition in how we're operating and working today. So I don't see any other questions. Again, if I missed your question, if you don't mind re-entering it in the Q&A, and I'll be sure to ask Arlene. But at this moment, Arlene, I think we got them all answered.
Great.
Okay, well, thank you very much, Arlene, for this excellent webinar. Before we conclude, I'd like to thank everyone who played a part and a role in today's webinar. And also, of course, thank you to you, our audience, for spending your time with us this afternoon. Please take a moment to fill out the evaluation by following the link provided in the chat. Also, look out for the recording and the PowerPoint from this workshop on the Census Academy by visiting census.gov/academy. That brings us to a close. So we thank you again and hope you have a great afternoon.